As anyone else, in cold periods of the year, I sometimes may suffer from colds or other things, but now I'm fine. I feel well, thank you. Sports haven't been mentioned. The Soviet sport newspaper. Something about the pike. Nikolai Yeremenko, the Soviet sport newspaper. I will be brief. There have been many sports developments. I will not mention the World Cup. We have been quite a successful organizer. It's a pity no one recalled that today, and Mutko yesterday was dismissed from football, definitely and finally. And we'll mark our 95th anniversary, and we hope to see you as a guest at our editorial house. Now the questions about doping practices, which is a chronic issue. It has become a political issue, I believe, and we have been subject to sanctions, and the international sports associations and federations are ready to bite us. But, for our sports officials, it is quite convenient. You may not do anything, just blame sanctions on everything. But can you tell us that we have cleaned ourselves up to the extent that we can say we're fine and we're clear? Now, you know what? To a large extent, it's our fault. I mean, what has happened? Because doping was used, which is one thing. Another thing is that it was government-backed. It is not true. It has never been the case. It will not be the case in future, because we shouldn't only think about the outcomes of the sports events, but about the health of our athletes. But we have had facts of doping. We should concede that, admit that, and we should accept it has been our guilt. We haven't been able to fight doping successfully in the past, and probably the public structures are to blame on that, and they should have worked better and tried harder. Have we cleaned ourselves up? I think not fully, not completely, despite the fact that we have provided good practices and standards. We need better quality of procedures and services, but it's not uniquely our problem, because doping is used worldwide. And now we're having a WADA Commission visit. Currently they are in talks with our Ministry of Sports. They are investigating the probes and samples and materials, looking into those, and I think there is some element of politicizing now. I hope it's gonna be passed in future. We'll turn the page. We've been working for quite a long, and we've been here for more than 3 hours. Probably we should conclude. In this respect, in this regard, colleagues, please be quiet. Otherwise, we'll call it a day. In this regard, I suggest, we have 3 veterans here, the federal Russian journalism veterans, Terechov Interfax, Gamo from Komsomolskaya Pravda, and Kondratyev NTV channel. So, in closing, let us give them the floor, and probably later on I will pick up some of the colleagues from the hall. The 3 of you are the most experienced, so be succinct, be concise. Okay, at the outset, we talked about medicines and health and healthcare and other things. To a huge extent, all that our health depends on medicines. To what extent we are autonomous and independent, I mean, this country, in our medication basis and stockpiles, and can we compare our medicines with international and foreign ones in terms of their efficiency, and who is in charge of the development of our analog medicines? And the fact is that they are worse than planned originally. It's a versatile issue, multifaceted one, and we should bring it to order. You asked who is in charge of the fact that our analogs are worse than the international ones. Ours are not worse, but, we should fight on several battle camps at the same time. Our developers and doctors should think more about how to treat and cure patients successfully. Like every now and then someone states that our medications are worse than imported ones. Let's switch to foreign medicines. But you know what? If a foreign medication, an imported medication, is desired for a specific patient, it should be prescribed. Now, with respect to the volume, we have started exporting drugs, medical drugs, to the tune of 700 billion rubles. 700 million rubles, which is not too big an amount, but anyway, it is something. And 30% of all that that we have in circulation in our market is Russian original medications, and 60% is packaged medications. Now, with respect to interdependence, now globally everybody is dependent on one another. With respect to our degree of autonomy, we produce 80% of the essential drugs on our own, mostly. It's not only about generic drugs, but also we manufacture the original feedstock and substances in this country. And we have had a program in place on the development of medical industry. It is underway, and it spells out that the volume should be around 200 billion rubles. It is being implemented quite effectively, and we will continue acting in this vein. Gamov, another veteran, antibiotics, one of the signs says. Now the floor to Gamov. The veteran has lost a mic. Just in a nutshell, Komsomolskaya Pravda website, newspaper, and radio station. Mr. President, you know, today I feel sorry for President Putin because the figures are sleek and wonderful and beautiful. They're truthful. And the specialists confirm that. I mean the numbers, but the ordinary people probably would not believe all of that because we have a hard existence, number one. And number two, at the bottom of our hearts and at our minds, we are not at ease. We have concerns and preoccupations about the future of our country. Why is that happening? Because the governors are afraid of Putin and the ministers are afraid of Putin. You have brought them to order. But you know, the public officials speaking about the sausage excise levy, or someone saying that Kremlin bars people from giving birth to children, they bring the society into turmoil and disrupt faith in president, so probably would need some reforms. Something must be done with this mid-level of public officials. They should be trained better and brought up. And my final point, on the eve of the press conference, I received a cable. Gamov asked President Putin, isn't it time to pay heed to the huge, glaring gap between the income of top managers and common folks, and when Mr. President will make a clear statement in this respect? Thank you. Your point is, you know, perennial, eternal. It's a chronic Russian statement or assumption. We have a good Tsar, and the noble people are thieves and swindlers. But you know what? If we're failing something, everybody is to blame. And you know what? It's not about the numbers and whether they're correct or not. The point is that there is no public awareness campaign. No one explains it to people, what has been happening. Because you heard that in the middle and at the outs of the press conference, I have said that we have had a drop in the real disposable income of our people. I'm not saying it's good. It slumped back in 2015. In 2016, it was minus 5.6% of take-home pay. I'm not saying it's good, but we should rectify that somehow.
I don't believe that people do not trust these numbers, but I guess that those are realistic figures and people understand that. And as for the officials in general, there are people who do not take heed of what they actually say. Those people who are in the wrong place. Those people who are not careful with their statements. There are people like that, but that's us. This is our environment. He used to be someone else, but now he's an official, and so he might slip from time to time. It means that he is not prepared to occupy such position. Of course, you must be prepared to work with all kinds of people, with all kinds of officials and functionaries, and there are lots of good people among them too. There's no avoiding it, really. You can't just, put something in the box, close it, then open it again, and everything is great. So it took Moses 40 years to lead the Jewish people out of the desert, but we do not have that time. This is a natural process of coming of age for a state. So we are holding all sorts of competition among young leaders, for example, the leaders of Russia competition. And we then send them to our academy, and from these people, 10 or 15 people have become governors, 2 ministers, 5 or 6 deputy ministers. So we are going to keep promoting this practice, but it would take a while. As for the gap, unfortunately, there is such a gap. That's the first thing I want to say. And secondly, unfortunately, this is a global trend. This is the case with major economies. Just look at the United States. Our colleagues from the United States are here, and they probably read their own analytical pieces, and they understand that the gap between the richest and the poorest is growing wider. And in this regard, President Trump, during his campaign managers have caught on that and actually used it in order to win the election, so they were right to do that. We need to take that into account. And we need to majorly cut the amount of people living below the poverty line. That is true. Okay. So the last question from another veteran. I'll keep it very brief. Mr. President, during a previous press conference, you said that you collect the emotions, and this is what constitutes your wealth. So, what year and what was the main event that enriched you? Well, the first one was the presidential elections. That is an important event for the entire country. And the second event is the World Cup. Again, this is a very important event for our country and for the world. Ussurisk, please. Right there. Yes, Ussurisk. What? Calm down, everybody. Yes, please. Ekaterina Harinova, Ussurisk. Mr. President, last year you signed the decree to transfer the capital of the Far East to Vladivostok from Khabarovsk. So what are the plans of the government to strengthen the region? First and foremost, the Primorsky region, and will we have gasification? And what do you think about unifying our region and the Sakhalinsk region? As for any sort of unification, this is actually a matter to be resolved by the regions themselves in accordance with the Russian law. If Sakhalin and the Primorsky region would like to unite, then they should hold special procedures, for example, referendum, or organize it through the legislative bodies, just like you have it in your laws. And Sakhalin is a self-sufficient region. They have a good budget. Their average income is higher than that of the region on the whole. So this is a matter to be resolved between the two regions. As for strengthening the region, we have a comprehensive set of measures for the development of the Far East. First and foremost, creating proper conditions for development. That's Far East Hector, the development of infrastructure, ports, airports, the support for export. First and foremost, non-energy exports. We are going to keep working on that. This is not going anywhere. So there's no doubt about that. This is one of the key areas for country's development. This is the avant-post of our country in the Far East. And this gives us advantages. We will keep developing science, education. We will keep supporting the federal university. We will also work on developing shipbuilding. And we are going to build a shipbuilding plant in Vladivostok. You know that the first steps have already been taken. Those were major steps. We are going to build the biggest ships in Russia there, and such large ships have not yet been built in the Soviet times. We are going to support the aviation industry, and all the plants would have relevant orders commissioned to them. And there's a whole new area also emerging, space and space activities. Our new launch pad in Vostochny, marine biology, everything related to fisheries. We will keep all of that under our control. And I do not doubt that we will have some positive results. Now, Euronews, please. Good afternoon. Galina Pavorskaya, Euronews. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask my question. I'll put the placard down. The UN adopted the resolution on the militarization of Russia of the Sea of Azov and the part of the Black Sea. After what happened to the Ukrainian vessels in the Kerch Strait, there were reports that Russia is supplying military equipment to Crimea. Why Russia wants to have a military build-up in the region, and is Russia ready to declare the whole naval area its territory, part of its territory? In 2014, the people living in Crimea came to the referendum and they voted for the unification of Crimea with Russia. And after a set of relevant domestic procedures, Crimea became a part of the Russian Federation, a part of Russia. And at any part of our country, we have the right to implement our military policy in the way that would provide for our military security. And Crimea is no exception. If the general staff, if our border guards believe that this has to be done, we will do that. Russia's security would be ensured. We are not going to come up with something extra, but what is required will be done. Now, as for the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait, from the outset, we said that we are going to build a bridge to connect us to Crimea. First, we've erected, so to say, an energy bridge. Now we have 2 power plants being constructed in Sevastopol and Simferopol with a power of 940 megawatts. We are building the Turid road. And at the end of 2020, next year, there's going to be a 2-way road, then there would be a 4-way road. So we are not talking about the military build-up per se, but also the civil infrastructure. And that is going to take place. We have the federal program for the development of Crimea in place, and the coming 2 years, we've allocated 300 billion rubles for the development of the region. At the same time, we will also strengthen the military component as is required, as for the Kerch Strait. The situation is indeed very complicated because the strait is quite narrow and quite shallow, just some 13 meters in depth, and at all times there was the pilot navigation there, and nothing stands in the way of building a bridge there. Just like before, pilots guided their ships through them. That's the case nowadays. The cargo turnover is growing there, including in the ports of the Sea of Azov. And all the economic players know the rules. There is a queue, right? Sometimes it can be longer or shorter. Just look at the port of Novorossiysk. There's a long queue of vessels there. On the 11th of September of last year, the Ukrainian vessels, including military vessels, have adhered to all the rules of passing through the strait and under the bridge, did not have any problem with passing to the Sea of Azov. They were guided by our pilots, and then they reached their port of destination. Nobody stood in their way. We've aided them. But this time it was different. This was a deliberate provocation as part of the election campaign of Mr. Poroshenko. And we've said that we've already shown the ship journal, and it said to pass covertly. And what does it mean covertly? Without the pilot's involvement, no one knows what's going to happen. And those people in Kiev who set the tune, they talk about that they're ready to actually blow the bridge up. We cannot allow that to happen. As for ordinary day-to-day activities, they are not limited in any way. As for the Sea of Azov, we have a treaty of 2003, and what does it state? It states that the shore area of 5 kilometers, not according to the international standards, 12 nautical miles, but 5 kilometers from the shore. This is the territorial waters of the state, be it Russia or Ukraine. And everything else is a neutral area. And when our fishers were actually seized, they were actually seized in those neutral waters. They were not entering the territorial waters. And they are still detained. And Euronews is silent about that, as if it's a common practice. The same was the case with our Navy members, and our vessel was once again seized, and nobody talks about that. Nobody remembers that. We are ready to stick to our agreements, and we are not taking any unilateral measures. As for military vessels, you should keep in touch with border control because they are in charge of the regime there. And considering there's martial law in place, I can hardly imagine that military vessels would be passing to and fro. But we want the situation to get better. We are not standing in the way of the passage of the naval traffic. We've only helped them the last time this situation happened. Ural. There's a placard saying Ural. Good afternoon, Roman Zykov, Ural Television. Mr. President, you say that patriotism should be our national idea. Maybe we should actually put it in law. Maybe we should change our constitution and include patriotism as part of the national idea, because constitution bans any national ideas. Well, actually, what is banned is the ideology. But patriotism is not banned by the Constitution. Well, I heard you. This is a matter to be brought to broader discussion. And the second point, we talked about active patriotism, and I'm talking about environment. A lot of money is being earmarked to filter the water, which then reaches the consumers, but no money is allocated for proper pipes to deliver the water to the consumers. And then sewer waters are being polluted, and thus the environment is being harmed. Unfortunately, 30% of sewage water pollutes our nature, and experts confirm that. Could you please pay attention to that and maybe adopt some measures so that the quality of pipes which deliver water to our citizens, our consumers, would be higher?
This has to do with technical regulations. You are right. We have to analyze what kind of pipes are supplied. I do agree this problem does exist, but it's not only in relation to pipes or wastewaters, how to purify them. It's a large-scale issue which has to do with the whole country, and we've adopted certain solutions. It has to do with the industry. It has to do with shifting to state-of-the-art technologies in accordance with our legislation. We are also we can impose fines for when wastewaters are not purified. So it's a problem which has to be dealt with. As to the changing our constitution, well, it should be discussed by all Russian citizens. Russians are in danger. What kind of Russians are in danger? Last row. You've showed this placard. Hamzat Datukayev, Chechen Republic, Grozny. Thank you for paying attention to our rules. It's the 4th hour of our press conference, and you gave the floor only to those who are up front. Here we have Latin American guests, and they are shouting Latin America, but nobody pays attention to them. If it's possible to give the floor after me to them. Well, Vladimir Vladimirovich, I forgot my question. Then let's give the floor to Latin America. Russians are in danger. Why? Because thousands of our compatriots are in Syria, and their kids are there. It was not their will to go there, and parents have been punished because of that. They are sent to prison, and kids are growing up without parents. We know your position, but how to solve this problem in the future? And second short question. The first president of Chechnya, Ahmad Kadyrov, asked you to build or to rebuild airport in Grozny. It has been rebuilt, but the reconstruction has not been finished, and now the Republican authorities are discussing the second stage of its reconstruction with various ministries. How could you help this? We welcome thousands and thousands of tourists in Chechnya, and the capacity of the airport does not correspond to these numbers. And we have the main avenue, Putin's Avenue, and we are building Judo Palace, which will have the name of Vladimir Putin. You are supported widely in our region, and the Chechens do respect you a lot. That's why I'd like, from Adygea or Karacháyevo-Cherkessia, my colleagues invited you there. If you go there, please come to us as well, to Chechnya. Thank you. You cannot come to you as well. One have to go there directly. I'll be there. I'll come to you. As to the kids, we are dealing with this problem. We have the program of returning kids to their motherland, to Chechnya, to Caucasus. And Ramzan Kadyrov is doing that, and we keep doing that. As to the airport, it is functioning, and it is functioning as international airport as well. If you need something else, well, Ramzan Akhmadovich will come to me, and we will discuss what else is needed. I don't understand what else shall be done. It is working. The airport is working. But we will see. Thank you for your invitation. People's friendship over there. People's friendship.
Vladimir Vladimirovich.
Good afternoon. I'm Valery Pavlichenko. I represent the first Russian national channel, TV channel. It has been created with the support of the National Relations Council, which functions under your auspices. As a follow-up of our Dagestan colleague, she mentioned multi-ethnic journalism. We are a young TV channel. We are telling about successes in the regions. We are talking about interethnic issues, and we need your assistance. We would like to be information partners in the implementation of national or policy. Could you assist us? We have interethnic council, interethnic relations council under the auspices of the president. I will ask my colleagues to call you, to get in touch with you and to work with you. It's a very important area for us. Well, Happy New Year to all of you, but it's high time to finish our press conference. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions. From my heart, I wish you success and a lot of happiness.
Соберешь, да? По чашку забери.